Texas Governor Greg Abbott, meantime, issuing an executive order restricting the transport of migrants who pose a risk of carrying COVID into Texas communities. Abbott is slamming the Biden administration for allowing COVID-positive migrants to move around freely while hitting Americans with new rules.
The Biden administration cares more about people who are not residents of America than he does of the residents of America, because he has one standard trying to mask up and vaccinate our fellow Americans, but by allowing free pass into the United States of people with a high probability of COVID and then spreading that COVID in our communities, as has been shown in the Rio Grande Valley. So what the Biden administration is doing is deadly, is dangerous, and it must be stopped.
Ken Paxton, Texas Attorney General, joins us now. Thank you so much for talking to us this morning. There are very large groups, I mean, back to back, 845 migrants to be exact, encountered in just a 24-hour period in Rio Grande Valley. Maybe you could explain to our viewers just how serious the situation is at the border with these COVID cases as they continue to pour in.
So we've never seen this type of migration into our state, and obviously with COVID exposure, that could potentially be deadly for our citizens. And so it's hard to understand why the Biden administration is so focused on stopping the spread of COVID with masks and mandates and vaccinations, and yet they've opened our border up and they've invited people to come, and they're telling people it's basically okay to come. And here we are. We've got the spread of COVID going on at a greater rate than we did just a few months ago. And so it's really irresponsible and dangerous for the Biden administration to continue this practice.
Let's talk about Governor Greg Abbott's executive order. It is called GA 37. He issued it just yesterday. It's going to restrict ground transportation of migrants who pose a risk of possibly carrying coronavirus into these Texas communities, which is, of course, incredibly unfair. How severe of a punishment will there be to those who don't abide by this rule, and how effective of a deterrent do you believe this to be?
I applaud the governor for doing it. He's doing everything he can, knowing that the Biden administration is working against us. But what that allows the local law enforcement to do is basically stop people that they are suspicious have come across in violation of state and federal law and who might have COVID, and basically send them back to the border. So it's no great punishment unless we catch them doing something else illegal. They're just being sent back to the border and pushed through the point of entry to make sure that they don't stay in our state and expose people potentially to more COVID.
What makes this so much worse is that, those that are detained are released. So I don't understand what the point is then of detaining in the first place. Republicans torching the Biden administration. There's a report out that states that 50,000 migrants have been released without court dates, and they're literally just disappearing into thin air, into the U.S., into these Texas communities, into other communities outside of Texas, with only 13% of them appearing to the ICE officials that they're supposed to meet. Do you agree with that assessment?
Oh, absolutely. We've taken an amazing step back. This is what was happening during the Obama administration. The way the asylum process worked, people came in, they were released. They knew that they didn't have a hearing for years, and they never showed up again. And everybody knew that, basically you come in, you just claim asylum whether you deserved it or not. And only a small percentage actually qualified for it. So now we're back to that same policy. They don't have to stay in Mexico. They disappear into the country. And now, with the exposure to COVID, that's going all over the country. We have no idea where these people are going.
Yeah, the tweets that were just up on the wall, if we can put them back, just show you how outraged GOP lawmakers are. Democratic lawmakers should be equally outraged, calling it utterly lawless, completely asinine and shameful. Senator Bill Hagerty calling it predictable. You believe this is predictable? This is a predictable crisis?
Oh, absolutely. We knew from the Obama administration what didn't work. And then Trump had to deal with this for 4 years, and instituting certain policies like the COVID restrictions and making sure that criminals were not released out of prison back into our state, into our country, and making sure that they had to stay in Mexico before they went through their asylum process. All of these things worked, including building a wall. And yet all of them have been pushed aside, knowing exactly what was going to happen, which is we are back to pre-Trump period numbers and even worse. And so we knew this was going to happen. This was predictable. The Biden administration wants this to happen, and they want it to happen knowing that the spread of COVID will be greater.
Yeah. Well, the White House is still blaming the Trump administration. You just touched on that. This has been an issue, obviously, since the Biden administration behind the border crisis. It's really a border chaos as it releases its plan to deal with the root causes now. This coming just nearly 2 months after Vice President Harris's visit to Guatemala, 5 months into her role at this point. As the person on the crisis. She was supposed to find the root of the cause when she visited Guatemala 2 months ago. So the plan includes addressing economic inequality, combating corruption, tackling domestic violence, among other issues. What would you say about this plan the White House is finally putting forward?
Well, I don't think it's going to work. I mean, it's going to take years to figure out what the root cause is. We know what the root cause is. The Biden administration has changed all the rules to rules that didn't work before. And so to blame the Trump administration, they keep talking about science as it relates to COVID. Why don't they just look at the numbers? The numbers speak for themselves. Go back a year ago and look at the numbers on how many immigrants we had coming in and what was going on with stopping people at the border, and look at the numbers now. They are dramatically different. There's no doubt that the change in policy has made things multiple times worse.
And the Biden administration continues to blame the Trump administration when the problems were there before the Trump administration, which is a lesson that should be learned by all politicians. The blame game just does not work. Get the job done. All right, Ken Paxton, thank you very much for talking to us today.